Hey dudes, what's up? It's an assassin, and today is another Friday Blab. After not doing Friday Blabs for a good bit, we're back. And if you couldn't tell from the title of this, we're going to talk about today which Chris is the best Chris. And of course, I'm referring to the Chris's of Hollywood. Because if you didn't know, there are 4 Chris's in Hollywood that are pretty popular within mainstream media. I don't know if you could technically call them all A-listers. I think they are. In my head, they are. But I'm also the type of person that's obsessed with Grant Gustin, who I want to be an A-list celebrity, but he's not, so don't go on my judgment. But anyways, let's get started by describing each and every Chris, and then at the end, you can figure out what your lineup of Chris's are from best to worst, and I'll tell you mine. So let's get started. So, first, let's talk about Chris Evans. Now, if you don't know who Chris Evans is, kind of amazing that you don't, firstly, but Chris Evans is Captain America in the MCU. Now, he's been in Captain America the First Avenger, Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Age of Ultron, and then, of course, Avengers Infinity War when it comes out in April. Now, he's also been in another Marvel movie, Fantastic Four. Now, not the new one. The older one. He was Human Torch in Fantastic Four. And if you didn't know that, now you do. Now you need to go back, watch those movies, and be like, this is the Chris before Captain America. Now, Chris has also made little Easter eggs in Thor: The Dark World, I believe. Yeah, Loki basically turns into Captain America, so Chris was in that one also. He might have been in more movies. I know he was in Spider-Man Homecoming, but not like as his character. He was just doing like videos in Spider-Man Homecoming. And I think that's it. I might be wrong, so comment down below if I am wrong, if he's been in any other Marvel Cinematic movies. Now, of course, being in Hollywood, he's been in a lot of other movies. Some you might know is The Gift, or The Gifted, I think, with the little girl who's super smart. He's also been in Snowpiercer, which was a movie that happens with, like, the whole Earth being, like, in a new ice age, and he's on a train, and he's, like, the poor person on the train, and he fights through the train to get to the conductor of the train to, figure everything out. He's also been in Before We Go, which he actually directed, and it's on Netflix if you do want to watch it. It's basically where he plays a character that plays a trumpet, and he meets the love of his life in New York, but of course, things happen, drama ensues, all that good stuff. He's also been in other movies, but you basically understand, you can get the gist of Chris Evans at this point. Now, Chris Evans can normally look like Captain America. Blonde hair, blue eyes, clean shaven, all good. But most of the time, he actually likes to look like brown black hair with a beard. Now, he has to shave and I assume dye his hair every time he plays Captain America besides Avengers Infinity War, because he is his normal size. It's a thing. You see it in Avengers Infinity War. But normally he looks like Avengers Infinity War Captain America and not the Captain America we know. Just because he wanted to be more like Captain America, not to mention Mario executives also probably wanted him to look more like Captain America than he actually does. So, there you go. Now, the thing about Chris Evans, at least to me, is the guy that is kind of homey. That might sound weird, but what I mean is that he is the guy, like, you want to go home to at night. That's a weird statement, but hear me out. If you look at Chris Evans, look at all his interviews and all his story arcs throughout his movies and everything, he is definitely like that homeboy guy. The guy that with the white picket fence and the dog and living in the suburbs, like, he is that guy. And that's why he's kind of homey. So, I think out of all of the Chris's, he's definitely the homey one. But, I also think he is definitely a player. And you might be questioning me right now, but if you look at him or like watch his interviews kind of closely, he seems to be a player. And it's not a player in a bad way. It's more of a, he likes to keep his personal life very to himself, not out in the public. And he also doesn't talk about who he's dating ever. And here's the thing. I think that people assume he is the homie guy, like I said, but I think he's also a player, which I don't know if many people think that like I do, but I swear on my life, I think he's a player. And it comes into facts when he definitely talks about relationships. So that's my take on Chris Evans. I don't know what you guys think Chris Evans is like. How do you like him? All that good stuff. Definitely comment down below what you like about Chris Evans. And maybe what's your favorite movie with Chris Evans in it? I think mine's probably Winter Soldier. Most likely. But, you know, we'll see what happens with Avengers Infinity War. Alright, now time for Chris number 2. Hemsworth. So, Hemsworth is Thor, if you didn't know, in the MCU. Now, he has been in, of course, Thor, Thor the Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Avengers Infinity War that's coming out. And I think that's it, in all honesty. I don't really remember him cameo in any of the movies, but he might have. But for me, that's where I know him as. But I also know him as short hair in Red Dawn, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. I love the remake of Red Dawn with Josh Peck, Chris Hemsworth, Josh Hutcherson. Like, it is a good movie. If you haven't watched it, I would definitely suggest going watching it, especially if you've seen all the Marvel movies and you've seen what Chris Hemsworth can do. I would definitely go watch Red Dawn, because Red Dawn definitely can show what Chris Hemsworth can do. Now, Chris Hemsworth, for me, is interesting. Now, I don't like Thor. I do like, though, Chris Hemsworth with short hair, which you might be saying is weird. I know a lot of people think I'm weird about that, but I have a thing where I just don't like long hair on guys. I don't know what it is, but I just can't. There are some guys that can pull off the really long hair, but in overall, I don't like long hair, and it is what it is. But Thor, I don't particularly like. But Thor Ragnarok, he does have short hair, and in Red Dawn, he has short hair, so that's a nice Chris Hemsworth with short hair. Now, who is Chris Hemsworth? Well, he's the Australian. That's it. That's really all I got for him. He's an Australian. Seems to be much like Chris Evans, like a homeboy, but an Australian one. He is the one you want to go home to when you live in Australia. Now, if you didn't know he is from Australia, he's from Australia. So, I don't know what that puts in your list. It could change it, could not, but, you know. Not to mention, Chris Hemsworth also does have two brothers. One younger, Liam, and one older, Luke. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I actually like Liam Hemsworth more than Chris. It is what it is. It is what it is. But what do you think about Chris Hemsworth? Where does he rank on your list? And what movie was he in that's your favorite? Comment all that below. And let's get to the next Chris. Alright, number 3, Chris Pine. So, Chris Pine is actually the reason why I'm making this video. Recently, I have been in a super Chris Pine mood. Like, I love all the Chris's, but for some reason, these past week and a half, I've been super obsessed with Chris Pine. And I don't know why. So, the past week and a half, I've been watching all of the movies that Chris Pine has been in. From all his Star Trek movies, which I don't know if you know this, but I freaking love Star Trek. I love Star Trek so much, I'm literally making a story about Star Trek. And I've watched him in This Means War, which is basically the movie with him and Tom Hardy where they're spies fighting over the same girl. I also watched him in Into the Woods. And I also watched him in like Sweet Home Saturday Night, I think. I think that was the one. I think it was more like an indie movie, so it was all weird. But he has been an obsession recently, but I don't really know. That's just why I kind of was making this video, is because I was thinking about which Chris is my favorite, because Chris Pine, kind of spoiler alert for the end of this video, Chris Pine has been making the ranks. Like, he's been pushing the ranks a little bit because of my obsession with him. We'll see what happens after my obsession with him, but so far he's definitely pushing up there. But Chris Pine, he is mostly known for his Star Trek series. He plays Jim Kirk, of course. He is also known as Steve Trevor in Wonder Woman, which is interesting because Chris Evans plays Steve Rogers in Captain America. They're both in World War II, so it's kind of funny. He also does, of course, This Means War, and all those other movies that I listed before. So if you haven't watched Chris Pine movies before, I would definitely go to Star Trek, and then Wonder Woman, and then probably This Means War, and Into the Woods. Those are all pretty good movies. Now, who is Chris Pine? Chris Pine is the playboy. He is. He's the playboy. We all know this. Like, you look at him and you're like, yep, he's the playboy. Especially compared to all the other Chris's, he is the playboy Chris. He's the one that would be great in bed. They're probably all great in bed, but he's the great one in bed. Sorry, inappropriate, I know. It's okay. I'm an adult. Anyways, Chris Pine is the playboy. But here's the thing, and this is what I said ties back to Chris Evans. I think Chris Pine, even though we all think he's the playboy and he seems to always be single, and I don't think he was ever married and like all these things, he's like Chris Evans, but I think secretly he is the homeboy. Like, I actually think that Chris Pine is the one you want to go home to build that white picket fence and that suburb house with the dog. I think Chris Pine is that guy. Unlike Chris Evans, where you look at Chris Evans and he's that guy. But I think secretly Chris Evans is a playboy. I think Chris Pine is secretly a homeboy. I don't know if the homeboy is the right terminology, but you get what I mean. I think Chris Pine is that, which is interesting. Very interesting. I don't know if anybody else has thought that way, but I thought that way. So I don't know if that changes your mind on anything. It kind of does for me a little bit, but not by much. But anyways, Definitely comment down below, what do you like about Chris Pine? Where is he on your list? And what's your favorite movie with him in it? Mine is definitely probably the Star Trek movies. I really love the Star Trek movies so much. I do like him in Into the Woods too, though. Especially since he sings my favorite song, Agony. And I love Agony. I literally put it on repeat 4 times last night while I was watching it because I love Agony so much. Now, let's get to the last and final Chris. Okay, number 4. The last and final Chris Pratt. Now, if you don't know, Chris Pratt is Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy. So, he's been in Guardians of the Galaxy, the second one, and he's gonna be in Avengers Infinity War. So, a lot of content for you to watch. He's also in Parks and Rec, I believe. I believe that's the show he's in. I don't watch it, so that's why I say I believe. I think he's in one of the, comedy office shows. So, I think it's Parks and Rec. Now, the interesting thing about Chris Pratt is that he went from decently chubby to Chris Pratt that we know with the freaking 6-pack and he's shredded. That happened because he got the role of Star-Lord, which kudos to him. That's what everyone should aspire to do. I feel it, man. I'm chubby. I should freaking do the Chris Pratt challenge and get up there and get a role in Marvel and freaking go at it. But that's besides the point. Anyways, who is Chris Pratt? Now, Chris Pratt's the funny one. Yeah, I know. I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you going oh my god, really? That's all you gotta say about him? He's the funny one? I know. But that's him. I think Chris Pratt, yes, is also the one you want to go home to with the white picket fence. But I think he's more of a funny one than anything. He is the funny one. He is the face of comedy. He's not the face of comedy, but he's the face of comedy in this analogy. But I still think that he is an interesting fella. Mostly because everything that's happening with him and his wife. It's an interesting thing, a series of developments that are happening because there's many different sources and stories about everything that's happening, that he's getting too famous for her, that he's been super egotistical, that a bunch of things, and I don't really know what to believe. It is what it is. But it's Chris Pratt. You gotta enjoy Chris Pratt. Who doesn't enjoy a good Chris Pratt? Now, anyways, what do you think about Chris Pratt? And what's your favorite movie of Chris Pratt? I do gotta say, Guardians of the Galaxy, pretty good. But I forgot to mention Jurassic World, which I'm not gonna lie to you, I kind of really like Jurassic World compared to Guardians of the Galaxy. Not gonna lie, I really appreciate Jurassic World, especially Nick Robinson in it. So that's how I fell in love with Nick Robinson, is because of Jurassic World. So I kind of have an attachment to Jurassic World. So, but it's probably not the main opinion of Chris Pratt's best movies, but it's mine. All right, so it's come to the end, and people who are not watching this have probably skipped to the end to see what my list is. Now, don't forget to comment down below what your list is of favorite Chris's. What's your list? Best to least favorite Chris. Now, let's get a little rundown. Remember, Chris Evans, who is Captain America in the MCU, and I believe he is 35. And my favorite movie of him in it, I think, is The Winter Soldier. Or Age of Ultron. I guess Age of Ultron is pretty good too. Number 2, Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth is Thor in the MCU. And he is 34, I believe. Now, my favorite movie of him in it, Red Dawn. Number 3, Chris Pine. Chris Pine is, I believe, 37. I believe 37. And my favorite movie of him is Star Trek. Probably the first one, I would say. Number 4, Chris Pratt, who is the oldest one at 38. And my favorite movie of him in it is, of course, Jurassic World. But he is Star-Lord in MCU. Now, the interesting thing is that 3 out of the 4 of these Chris's are, of course, in the MCU, the other one being in the DC Cinematic Universe. Probably called DCCU, but nobody's come up with a really good name yet to see if it's going to catch. But here's my list. Drum roll, please. Number 1, Chris Pratt. Now, you might be wondering why. I like a funny guy. Funny guys are quality content for me. Not to mention, Chris Pratt looks very fine. One of my favorite hot Chris Pratt scenes is of him in Guardians of the Galaxy with the orange stuff on him. That's saved on my phone. That's some quality stuff. Number 2 / number 3. Now you might say that's a cop out, but hear me out. Number 2 / number 3 is Chris Pine and Chris Evans. And here's why. I love Chris Pine. And with my new obsession with Chris Pine recently, he's definitely pushed up. Because originally he was 3rd, but very near 2nd to Chris Evans. But now he's kind of moved up the ranks and is kind of 2nd with Chris Evans 3rd by the hair. And here's why. The thing is, I like Chris Evans clean shaven. So if we're talking Chris Evans clean shaven, he's about the same level as Chris Pine and in 2nd. But if we're talking bearded, he's kind of pushed back a little to 3. So that's why I kind of have it 2 and 3, just because it's still it's very close between the 2. And of course, as you can tell, number 4 is Chris Hemsworth. And as you maybe or maybe not watched before, Chris Hemsworth to me is questionable just like 2 and 3. If he has short hair, I like him a lot better than if he has long hair, as in Thor. So it makes me question him a little bit. Not to mention, I also do like Liam better than Chris. So it is what it is. But anyways, comment down below your list of Chris's. Comment on my list of Chris's. What do you think about it? What do you think my reasons are? Are they good reasons? Are they bad? They're really bad. But, it's my opinion. So, it is what it is. Alright, I hope you dudes did enjoy. Don't forget the subscribe button with your repulsor blast to become part of the AU Avengers Unlimited. And hit that like button with your Master Sword. And don't forget, comment down below your favorite Chris's. Also, comment down below any other Friday blabs you have in mind for me to do. And yeah, I'll see you dudes next time. Bye!